This is the world famous BBC Broadcasting House, seen on so many of my favourite black and white B films. You know the ones I'm talking about. And when you think about the BBC, of course, you think about all the history that is attached to it. This building was opened in 1932 and everybody thought it was literally the state-of-the-art building. Now, I was lucky enough in the 1990s to frequent this building on a regular basis. Oh yes, and it was wonderful to walk through knowing that you were literally walking through those hallowed doors that so many people had gone through before. I must tell you a very funny story though about being in here, because a few years back, as I say, probably now in the 90s, maybe the late 90s in fact, who remembers the brilliant comedian Jackie Mason, right? Now Jackie Mason and I were both queuing up in the main reception here, and I'd known him a little bit, but we're just queuing up there. And basically, out of nowhere, a massive storm erupted outside. I mean, a mega storm, and literally it was flooding everywhere. The drains were just coming up, everything. And they had automatic doors, which you can't see here because sadly it's just boarded up. They're doing something there right now. But we'd gone through those main doors, right? And basically the doors flung open and all of this water rushed in, covering your shoes and everything like that. And rushing in with the water was none other than a pile of rats. I kid you not. And people were screaming, climbing on top of chairs and desks and stuff like that. And I just looked at Jackie Mason and he said, in his very Bronxy voice or New York voice or whatever, he said, "It's the first time I've ever seen rats joining a sinking ship." What a good line. I've never forgotten it. And every time I'm here, I think about the brilliant man. Very funny man indeed. But today's story really is quite sad, because when we often think about people working in television now, you do think of the baddies, don't you? In my era, particularly with New Faces, it was the brilliant composer, arranger, and of course, songwriter, Tony Hatch. He was the baddie in the talent show New Faces. And then more recently, of course, another ex-boss of mine, Simon Cowell. Yes, he was known for being acidic, not just in American Idol, but of course on X Factor over here. But way back in the late 1940s, early 50s, there was another man, this man, Gilbert Harding. Now, Gilbert had had something of a checkered career, Times columnist, a policeman in Bradford, and also he sort of invented himself, do you know what I mean, in certain stories. No two ways about it. But clearly he wanted to be famous. That fame came very quickly, all thanks to a brilliant radio show called 20 Questions. That was then turned into a movie as well, of which he appeared. But the thing was, you see, that Gilbert had something of a terrible temper inside the public, not just with the public, but with people that he worked with as well. Quite acidic, put downs, that sort of stuff. Deep down, though, there was another deeper side to Gilbert Harding. He was very tormented. He did a lot for charity underground, often visited children's hospitals, and tried his very best to cheer people up who perhaps couldn't get out or were housebound. A sort of duplex personality, as it were, very conflicted, no two ways about it. His real fame, though, came through the TV show What's My Line, hosted by many different people over here, and I know a huge success also over in the United States. I'm not sure if there were other syndicated versions around the world, but I know it was a big show. Gilbert truly stole the show. He was opposite at times Lady Isabel Barnett. But it's interesting, isn't it, when you think, because Gilbert, as I said, was one of those people that, just really kind of angered the British public. But sadly for him, it all came way too early. He sat down in 1960 for a very revealing interview called Face to Face. And this would be now like a sort of, I don't know what you'd kind of call it in the same day, but it was a revelation, you got people to cry, a little bit like Private Passion, stuff like that. And you got all of that revealing, that sort of stuff. Gilbert couldn't believe how far he'd been drawn out of himself and actually did have second doubts about whether he should allow this to be broadcast. All of that, though, was swept away because, quite frankly, one day after recording a version of What's My Line, he stepped out of the front door here of BBC Broadcasting House, and he'd already been suffering from bad asthma, and London being quite smoggy in that particular period. Sadly, he collapsed and died, quite literally creating death at Broadcasting House. He was, I say, a very difficult character, no two ways about it. But what you have to remember with people like that is they were superstars of their day. As I say, he popped up in many different guises and he was offered so many things, advertising deals, pantomimes, all sorts of stuff. He was bigger, some might suggest, than Simon Cowell was the last few years back. But time waits for no man. And sadly, when you ask people outside here today, have you ever heard of Gilbert Harding? Nobody has, but quite literally, he left his mark in the world of broadcasting and certainly left his mark outside here at Broadcasting House. Thousands of people paid tribute to him when he passed away, and it was basically a national outcry. You know, people were very sad with his demise. But as I say, in 2024, how many people remember Gilbert Harding now? Always good to remember, share, and look these people up, I'm sure you'll agree. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.